In the last video, we learned about functions and got to know how flow functions work in Composer Pro. Now we'll take a look at the other type of functions in Composer, formula functions. Let's start by creating a paragraph component, and then let's bind the content property to a formula. This opens up the formula editor. The initial formula we get is one that returns a text string. Formulas work so that formula is evaluated and the final value gets outputted as the value for the binding. The entire formula is kind of a function that can be written using the formula syntax. We can, for example, erase the current formula and type in 1 plus 1. The formula will now output 2 once the paragraph component is loaded in the application. The formula editor also enables us to use formula functions. These are named functions that encapsulate commonly used logic. Let's again erase the formula, and then let's look for the capitalized formula function on the left panel under the text category. On the right, the information panel displays a description and examples for the currently selected formula function. Double-clicking the current function will add it to the formula. The capitalized formula function takes a text string as an argument and outputs a text string with the first letter capitalized. You can see a preview of the output below the formula input, as well as a validation result for the type, showing here that the output matches the text type property we're binding to. You can also combine formula functions. For example, we can first use the capitalize function and then use the output of that as input for the truncate function, which limits the text to a certain number of characters. The formula functions are evaluated starting from the most inner ones. While this looks different, if you think about it, it's very similar to the way we earlier combined flow functions and their inputs and outputs. We can also work with more complex data in formulas. Let's, for example, output something like the content information object from before. This object, of course, isn't compatible with the text type content property we're binding to. How could we process this data so that we could place it into a text type field? Under the object category, there is a formula function called Lookup. It takes an object as the first argument and allows us to get one of its properties by key with the second argument. So here's a way we can get a single property value out of our object. In a real-world app, your data is probably not going to be written out like this, but contained in variables. However, I wanted to show you this as a visualization of how everything works. Finally, let's pull everything we've done so far together in this example where we'll do some processing on the context list variable from an earlier video. The page variable, which is a list of objects, looks like this. In the data video, we put it together step by step, so feel free to pause here and go check out that part if you don't have the variable available right now. First, let's have a new list item element, and then let's start to bind the repeat with property. Okay, so first, to simply get to the page variable, we can actually find it here on the left panel. Then let's say we want to control the order of the data. We can find various sorting functions under the list category of formula functions. Let's select sort by key. It takes 3 input arguments: the list of objects to sort, the property key by which to sort, and the sorting direction. So the first argument is going to be the page variable context list, which again is a list of objects. The second argument is going to be the key we want to sort by, so here name makes sense. And the final argument is one of the 2 sorting directions. Then just like before, we just bind the list item labels and we can see that the page variable contents are being processed by the formula, which is outputting a new sorted list. Formulas and formula functions are very powerful, but they can appear complicated. However, by applying a few basic principles of input arguments, outputs, and types, it's possible to make sense of even larger formulas and use them to your advantage. Things you now know about formulas and formula functions. Any formula is like a function in that it performs some task, can take inputs, and outputs a result. Formula functions are a named library of functions that can be used in formulas. Formula functions can be combined with the output of the inner functions used as input for the outer ones.